The restaurant buzzed with the usual dinner-hour clamor, clattering silverware, muted laughter, the hiss of coffee machines. Among the waitstaff, Jasmine Bennett moved gracefully, balancing trays and orders with a practiced smile that masked exhaustion. At 24, she carried the weight of more than tables and tips. A first-generation college graduate, she juggled school loans, part-time tutoring, and caring for her younger siblings. Her intellect, sharp and unapologetic, was rarely recognized in the cramped spaces she worked in. Where people judged uniforms before minds, tonight, she approached a table near the corner where the CEO of a prominent tech company, Richard Langston, sat with a few associates. He was the kind of man whose presence filled the room, polished shoes reflecting the chandelier light, tailored suit commanding attention. Jasmine took the drink orders, carefully noting the nuances in their accents and preferences. When she returned with sparkling water for him, he smirked, leaning back in his chair. "If you're so smart, then translate it," he said, mockery dripping from every syllable, pointing at the foreign language menu one of his colleagues had accidentally left open. The table erupted in laughter, and Jasmine felt the heat rise to her cheeks, a mix of embarrassment and indignation. Her mind raced. She had spent years mastering languages, understanding cultures, and decoding complex technical texts. But here, in this moment, her skills were reduced to a punchline. For a heartbeat, she froze, tray trembling slightly. Then she squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze. Calmly, she spoke, her voice steady despite the familiar sting of condescension. "I don't need to translate for anyone to understand respect. But if you wish, I can explain what the words actually say, and perhaps you'll learn something too." The room quieted, not because he was immediately respectful, but because her confidence was undeniable. Richard blinked, the laughter fading as the other diners shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jasmine opened the menu, reading the foreign words aloud, then explained the meaning behind them. She didn't just translate, she contextualized, linking the text to culture, history, and nuance. The CEO leaned forward, disbelief etched across his features. The mockery he intended had evaporated, replaced by a rare flicker of genuine astonishment. As Jasmine walked away, she felt a rush of quiet victory. Her dignity had remained intact, but the night was far from over. A young boy at a nearby table had been observing, his eyes wide. His father was a new immigrant, struggling to navigate a city that often spoke in tones too sharp to understand. Jasmine had noticed his silent attention and offered a small nod and a smile as she passed. That gesture, small as it seemed, would resonate far beyond the restaurant walls. Days later, an unexpected email landed in Jasmine's inbox. It was from Richard Langston himself requesting a meeting. Hesitant but intrigued, she accepted. He was uncharacteristically candid. "I underestimated you," he admitted, voice low. "Your intelligence, your composure. It's a lesson I won't forget." He offered her an internship opportunity at his firm, a position that would allow her to use her talents, mentor young employees, and bring fresh perspectives to his team. Jasmine agreed, not out of ego, but because she recognized the power of turning a moment of injustice into an opportunity to transform not only her life, but the lives of others. Over time, Jasmine became a beacon in her community, using her story to inspire other young Black women who had been underestimated, ignored, or mocked. She founded a mentorship program that combined language, technology, and cultural literacy, ensuring no one felt invisible or dismissed. Richard Langston, once blinded by privilege, became her advocate, learning humility and the value of amplifying voices previously silenced. Years later, at a public event honoring her achievements, Jasmine stood before a crowd, recounting the night in the restaurant. She paused, looking into the audience, and said softly, "Kindness, respect, and belief in yourself can turn ridicule into opportunity. One act of courage can rewrite a life, not just yours, but everyone who witnesses it." The audience erupted in applause, but for Jasmine, the true victory was in the quiet smiles she saw, young faces knowing that intelligence and heart could never be diminished by mockery, only illuminated by resilience. The weeks following that evening in the restaurant were a whirlwind. Jasmine continued to work her shifts, but now she carried herself differently. her head held a little higher, her steps a little surer. The young boy she had noticed, Malik, would sometimes peek from behind his father, offering shy waves as she passed. Each wave reminded her that small gestures could plant seeds of confidence that might bloom decades later. Her internship with Richard Langston began quietly. Initially, she felt the weight of being the token hire, a black woman from a modest background suddenly entering a high-powered tech environment. Her first day, she walked through the glass doors of Langston Enterprises, heart racing. Executives paused to look at her, their eyes a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Jasmine smiled, her mind sharp as ever, ready to prove her worth. The CEO himself greeted her, his demeanor different now, less polished arrogance, more tentative respect. "Welcome, Jasmine. I'm glad you accepted," he said, shaking her hand with genuine warmth. She noticed the subtle humility in his tone, and it surprised her. He wasn't just offering her a position. He was offering her the chance to reshape the environment that had once been so hostile. During her first week, Jasmine noticed how many brilliant ideas were being dismissed, often because the voices proposing them were unconventional. She began speaking up, her explanations clear and passionate, her insights informed by experience that transcended boardroom theory. Slowly, colleagues who had once ignored her started leaning in, asking questions, seeking her opinion. The culture shifted, not overnight, but steadily, like water carving through stone. One afternoon, Jasmine was tasked with leading a workshop for the company's interns on cross-cultural communication. She stood at the front of a bright conference room, Malik's shy eyes now twinkling in the audience. As she spoke, she shared her story, the mockery in the restaurant, the lesson in dignity, and the courage it took to respond with knowledge instead of anger. The interns listened, rapt. She paused and looked around the room. "Being smart isn't just knowing facts or languages," she said softly. "It's having the courage to act when someone underestimates you. It's using what you know to uplift others, not just yourself. And sometimes, the smallest act of defiance in the face of disrespect can create ripples far beyond what you see." Afterward, Malik approached her, his small hands clutching a notebook. "Ms. Bennett, I want to be like you someday," he whispered. Jasmine knelt to his level, her heart swelling. "You already are, Malik, you already are." Meanwhile, Richard Langston had transformed too. Witnessing Jasmine's resilience and integrity, he became an advocate for diversity and mentorship within the company. He spoke openly to executives about the power of listening, recognizing talent, and challenging the unconscious biases that had once blinded him. "Jasmine reminded me," he admitted during a meeting, "that intelligence is everywhere. Opportunity should be too." Months passed and Jasmine's program expanded beyond the company. She founded Voices Unseen, a mentorship network for young women of color in tech, emphasizing leadership, confidence, and self-advocacy. Each success story, each young woman stepping into a boardroom with poise, was a tribute to her own journey from mockery to empowerment. Years later, Jasmine returned to the restaurant where it all began. The interior had changed, new tables and new faces, but the memory of that night, the mockery, the choice to rise above it, was vivid. She left a small plaque near the hostess stand, engraved with a simple message: "Courage and kindness are louder than mockery." Walking out, she noticed a young woman struggling to communicate with a waiter, her accent thick and her confidence thin. Jasmine smiled, approached her, and said warmly, "If you need help, I'm right here." And in that moment, the cycle continued. Mockery met with patience, ignorance met with dignity, fear met with courage. One act of resilience had created a chain reaction, and the world, just a little bit, was better for it. Jasmine Bennett wiped the last streak of espresso foam from the counter, her hands steady but her mind racing. The lunch rush had subsided, leaving her alone in the upscale Manhattan cafe. Despite the bright lights and polished floors, a familiar heaviness settled in her chest. She had heard it before, the subtle dismissive tones, the microaggressions, the assumption that she didn't belong. But today, something different lingered in the air. Across the cafe, a man in a crisp navy suit had been sitting at the corner table, tapping impatiently on his laptop. He looked up, glaring at Jasmine as she approached. "Can you, translate this for me?" he demanded, tossing a receipt and a menu onto the counter. His tone was sharp, dripping with arrogance. Jasmine raised an eyebrow, careful not to let her frustration show. "Translate?" she asked softly, pretending not to notice the mocking tone. "Yes, you speak multiple languages, don't you?" he snapped. "Then translate it." The cafe fell silent for a heartbeat. Other customers glanced over, some curious, others uneasy. Jasmine felt her pulse quicken, but she took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of her grandmother's voice echoing in her mind. "Knowledge is your power. Never let anyone take it away by fear." Slowly, Jasmine smiled. She leaned over the counter, picked up the receipt, and in perfect French recited the items aloud. Then in Spanish, then German, her voice steady and clear. Every word dripped with confidence and calm authority. The man's jaw dropped. His arrogance, sharp and loud just moments ago, faded into stunned silence. "Wait," he stammered, fumbling his laptop. You spoke all of that?" Jasmine nodded. "Yes, and if you need, I can provide the translations in English too." Her tone was gentle but firm, every syllable radiating competence and dignity. She set the papers neatly on his table. The cafe erupted in quiet murmurs of admiration. The other staff exchanged proud glances, and Jasmine felt something stir within her, a deep, exhilarating sense of justice tempered with grace. That moment became a turning point. Weeks later, Jasmine received an unexpected message on LinkedIn. A recruiter from Langston Enterprises had seen a video someone posted online of her translations and poise. They wanted her to apply for an internship at one of the city's most competitive tech firms. The first day of the internship was surreal. The building gleamed with glass walls and polished floors, a cathedral to commerce. Executives bustled past, phones glued to their ears. Jasmine's nerves threatened to unravel her, but she held her chin high. She remembered the cafe, the man's shock, and the feeling of control she had wielded in that moment. It fueled her confidence. Her mentor, a senior analyst named Marissa, welcomed her warmly. "Don't let anyone intimidate you," she said. "Your skills speak louder than words." Jasmine nodded, committing it to memory. It wasn't easy. Meetings were intimidating. Projects were challenging. Some colleagues doubted her, silently questioning whether someone from her background could truly deliver. But Jasmine was relentless. She stayed late, studied harder, asked questions, and volunteered for presentations that others shied away from. One afternoon, a team meeting turned unexpectedly tense. The CEO, Richard Langston, questioned the accuracy of a report Jasmine had co-authored. His tone was pointed, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Jasmine felt a familiar flash of irritation but took a deep breath. She calmly explained the methodology, providing clear examples and data points. Her clarity and poise impressed even the most skeptical colleagues. Afterward, Langston called her into his office. "I underestimated you," he said, his voice low. "You're remarkable." He paused, then added almost to himself, "I shouldn't have doubted anyone's abilities based on assumptions." Jasmine smiled politely. "We all have room to grow," she said, her eyes steady. "It's never too late to listen." From that day, things shifted. Jasmine's ideas gained traction. Her work ethic and intellect began to influence company culture. She started initiatives to encourage diversity in tech, mentoring young women of color and speaking at schools about self-confidence, resilience, and pursuing one's passions despite systemic barriers. Malik, a shy 14-year-old from her neighborhood, who had once helped her carry groceries, joined one of her mentorship programs. She remembered his timid smile, and she recognized the spark of potential. Jasmine shared her story, the mockery in the cafe, the courage to respond with knowledge, and the transformation that had followed. "You see," she told him during the program, "it's not about proving someone wrong with anger. It's about proving yourself right with grace. Knowledge is your shield, and confidence is your sword. Use both wisely." The mentorship program flourished. Students who had once felt invisible discovered their voices. Parents wrote letters of gratitude. Teachers shared stories of changed classroom dynamics. Jasmine's own life had transformed, but the true reward was watching others blossom under her guidance. Years passed, and Jasmine's reputation grew. She became the youngest director in the company's history, overseeing initiatives that promoted inclusion, empowerment, and mentorship. She never forgot the cafe incident. It had ignited a chain reaction that reshaped not just her life, but the lives of countless others. On the 10-year anniversary of her internship, Jasmine returned to that very cafe. The interior had changed, new staff, new customers, but the memory was vivid. She left a small plaque on the wall. "Courage and knowledge are louder than mockery." A young waitress approached her nervously, shy and uncertain. Jasmine smiled and said gently, "If anyone ever underestimates you, remember this. Your voice matters, your skills matter, and your dignity matters. Let the world see it." In that moment, Jasmine understood fully. True power wasn't in proving someone wrong. It was in lifting others up, in creating a world where respect and opportunity were not privileges, but rights, and somewhere far above the city lights. The echoes of a CEO's stunned silence reminded her that sometimes the smallest acts of self-assurance ripple outward, transforming not just lives but entire communities. Years passed, and Jasmine's work went beyond Langston Enterprises. She established the Bennett Initiative, a foundation dedicated to empowering young women of color in STEM, hospitality, and leadership roles. Each scholarship, mentorship program, and training session carried the echo of that fateful cafe encounter, a reminder that dignity and skill could transform prejudice into opportunity. One spring morning, she visited a local high school to speak at an assembly. Nervous students filled the auditorium, some fidgeting, others staring wide-eyed at the woman who had once been a waitress in Manhattan. Jasmine began softly. "I know what it feels like to be underestimated, to have people mock your abilities, your intelligence, even your dreams. But let me tell you something. They can only define you if you let them." She shared her story, her encounter with the mocking CEO, the moment she chose grace over anger, and the doors that had opened afterward. Her words were punctuated by laughter, gasps, and nods of understanding from students who recognized pieces of themselves in her journey. After her speech, a quiet girl approached her, clutching a crumpled notebook. "Miss Bennett, I've always loved science, but people tell me I'm not smart enough. You make me feel like I could do it." Jasmine knelt, placing a hand gently on the girl's shoulder. "You already have the brilliance inside you," she said. "Now let the world see it." That afternoon, Jasmine returned to her office to find a letter waiting on her desk. The handwriting was unfamiliar, careful, almost trembling. It read, "Dear Ms. Bennett, I'm Malik Johnson. 10 years ago, I was a quiet boy who didn't think anyone saw me. Today, I am studying engineering at MIT, and I want to thank you. You believed in me, and because of that, I believe in myself. I will make sure that no one is invisible on my watch." Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. The ripple had come full circle. Her courage, once sparked by mockery, had created a wave of hope, empowerment, and opportunity. That evening, as she walked past the same cafe where her life had changed, she paused. The sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the polished floors and the customers' smiles. Jasmine whispered softly, as if the city itself could hear, "Knowledge is my power, kindness is my weapon, and grace is my shield." Let every action count, and in that moment, she realized true triumph wasn't in silencing mockery or shocking CEOs. It was in nurturing potential, opening doors for others, and transforming society one life at a time. Even the CEO who once mocked her eventually sent an apology and a donation to her foundation, humbled by the elegance of her response and the breadth of her impact. He learned, perhaps too late, that underestimating someone never diminishes their power. It only diminishes the one doing the underestimating. Years later, Jasmine watched young women and men, scholars and interns, walk into the world with confidence. Their eyes sparkled with hope, their voices rang with ambition, and their hearts carried kindness as a legacy. Jasmine knew then, with absolute certainty, that the moment of courage in a small cafe had grown into something much larger, a world where merit, compassion, and resilience could outshine prejudice, mockery, and doubt. And somewhere, in the quiet hum of the city, she could almost hear the echo of her younger self, standing tall and speaking clearly, "I am enough. I am seen, I am capable," because indeed one moment of poise, one act of grace, can change a life, and sometimes an entire generation. Years passed, but the memory of that cafe encounter remained etched in Jasmine's mind. It wasn't bitterness she carried, it was clarity. Every time she walked past the polished floors and smelled the aroma of coffee and pastries, she remembered the moment she had chosen dignity over anger, intelligence over fear, and grace over confrontation. Jasmine had not only risen in her career, but had become a beacon for young women who, like her, had been underestimated. She established the Bennett Initiative, a foundation focused on empowering young women of color in hospitality, business and STEM. Scholarships, mentorship programs, and leadership workshops became the foundation's heartbeat. Each initiative carried a single message. Your worth is not defined by others' mockery, but by your courage and persistence. One crisp spring morning, Jasmine visited a high school to speak at an assembly. The auditorium buzzed with the chatter of teenagers, many of whom had never imagined someone like her standing before them. Someone who had faced mockery, yet prevailed. Jasmine took the stage, her presence calm yet commanding. I know what it feels like to be underestimated, she began. To be mocked for your abilities, your dreams, even your intelligence. But here's the truth. Your potential doesn't need validation from those who fail to see it. It already exists within you, waiting for you to recognize it. She shared her story, the CEO who mocked her, the choice she made to respond with grace, and how that choice changed her trajectory. The students listened, riveted, nodding in understanding, some wiping away tears, others smiling with hope. After her speech, a quiet girl approached her, clutching a worn notebook. Ms. Bennett, I've always loved science, but people tell me I'm not smart enough. You make me feel like I could do it. Jasmine knelt beside her. You already have that brilliance, she said, placing a hand gently on the girl's shoulder. Now let the world see it. That afternoon, a letter arrived on Jasmine's desk. The handwriting was young but careful. Dear Ms. Bennett, I'm Malik Johnson. 10 years ago, I was a quiet boy who didn't think anyone saw me. Today, I am studying engineering at MIT, and I want to thank you. You believed in me, and because of that, I believe in myself. I will make sure no one is invisible on my watch. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears. The ripple effect of her courage had come full circle. Her poise, her grace, and her decision to rise above mockery had transformed lives, one person at a time. As she walked past the same cafe where it all began, she paused. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the polished floors, the warm glow of the counters, the laughter of patrons. Jasmine whispered softly as if the city itself could hear. Knowledge is my power, kindness is my weapon, and grace is my shield. Every action matters, and indeed it did. Over the following years, countless young women flourished under her mentorship. The CEO who had once mocked her eventually sent an apology and a generous donation to her foundation, humbled by her resilience and the enormity of her impact. He had learned, too late perhaps, that underestimating someone never diminishes their potential. Jasmine watched new generations walk boldly into the world, their eyes bright with hope, their voices confident, their hearts carrying the legacy of kindness and courage. She knew then, with unwavering certainty, that one act of grace, one moment of standing tall, can transform not only a life but an entire generation. And somewhere, amidst the city's hum, she could almost hear the echo of her younger self, standing proud saying, I am enough, I am seen, I am capable. Because indeed, courage and kindness, when wielded together, can change the world.